One of the most important things that a veteran needs to know when they're getting into the VA disability claims process is just exactly how does the VA decide whether or not they should compensate a veteran for a condition that the veteran currently has. And to understand that, you need to know what service connection is. So in this video, I am going to talk about the 4 different types of ways that the VA service connects a condition to their active duty service. And those 4 are direct service connection, secondary service connection, presumptive, and aggravation. And each one of these, I'm going to go into detail about them. And I'm going to talk about how you, the veteran, need to be able to prove to the VA that this condition should be either direct, secondary connection, presumptive, or aggravation. So the first one is probably the most common service connection that most veterans are going to file. It's probably the first one that they're going to do, and maybe even the last one that they're going to do. And it's probably the most easiest concept to understand. But it's still challenging because it's new and it can be complicated. Essentially, direct service connection is just any disability that a veteran has or complaints or symptoms that a veteran has that's now connected to a current condition that they have, but it all started in the military. So you can use some sort of evidence from when you were in the military to get that. And just to help you understand it a little bit, I drew on the dry erase board here, I put active duty military in the square. And really direct connection is that something happened here in the military, whether you went to the doctor, whether you got an injury, whether there was some sort of exposure, something happened here while you were in the military. And you're going to draw a conclusion to a current diagnosis that you currently have to say that this incident or injury or whatever it was that happened in the military is connected to that. And that's your nexus. And that's direct service connection, simply. And if you can show that with medical evidence from your service treatment records or some other sort of evidence that you have, that would be considered a direct service connected condition. Now that you understand that, and essentially the process is still the same, you're still going to connect everything to your active duty military service, but that's probably the most direct, hence the name direct service connection, that you're going to see in your process. The next one I'm going to talk about is secondary conditions. And I probably should have talked about this one at the end because I think it's probably one of the most complicated ones because it does require a little bit probably more evidence and thought. And it's not one of those conditions where you can, and many times it's not one of those conditions that you're going to be able to write a personal statement giving your opinion on how something was how one condition caused another condition, because simply we're not all medical professionals, so it is a little bit more difficult to do that. Now, a secondary connected condition is a condition that develops later on, after you got out of the military, as a result of a condition that you already had connected to your military service. So let's say that when you were in the military, you were diagnosed with migraine headaches, you got them frequently, you went to the doctor frequently, and when you got out of the military, they gave you a disability rating for migraines. And then let's just say that something else happened, another condition that you had was caused as a result of those migraines. And I think probably an example off the top of my head maybe would be, maybe your migraines just destroy you and it just creates some serious mental health problems for you. That's an example of a secondary condition. As a matter of fact, mental health can be connected to a lot of different direct service connected conditions. Let's think about chronic pain, back problems, knee problems, a lot of mental health providers will help you connect mental health to other conditions like chronic pain. So that's a really good example of one that might work, where maybe you didn't have mental health problems while you're in the military, But a connected condition caused those mental health issues, and now you have them. Other good examples could be a knee injury that eventually caused a back problem for you. Maybe you walk with an irregular gait, which has caused your back to have issues. Same thing with a knee and a neck, an ankle to a knee condition. So there's a lot of different conditions that can be medically connected, and that is what a secondary condition is. And how do you prove it? You prove it by, number one, showing that you have an existing current condition that the VA has service connected already. And then you need to be able to show that you have a current diagnosis for another condition that you're trying to connect. And then you need to be able to have a good, strong medical opinion or an evaluation or some sort of assessment showing the causation, showing that your migraine headaches have created so many problems for you that now you suffer from depression, or your injury, your ankle injury, which is a connected condition that the VA recognizes as service connected, has now caused some issues with your knee, and you have a current diagnosis for your knee condition. Now you need to show that you have that ankle condition has now caused that knee condition, and that's what the VA is looking for. Now, how do you get those? There's a bunch of different ways. You can get those from your own personal doctor. If you feel comfortable asking them, and I think it's a normal thing to ask them if they are your treating physician, I feel very strongly that you should be able to ask them questions like that. Like, hey, is it possible that my ankle injury, when I was in the military, I hurt my ankle, and now is it possible that this has caused that? They might say no. It may not be relevant. You wouldn't know because you're not a doctor. But the doctor might be able to help you understand that. The good thing about the VA is they don't necessarily, there's a benefit of the doubt doctrine. So if the doctor thinks that it's at least as likely as not, or more likely than not, the VA should decide that in your favor. So there are ways of doing that. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your doctor, or your doctor simply doesn't want to put notes in your records, documenting or articulating what your doctor thinks is his or her opinion on this, because quite honestly, if your doctor feels that condition was caused by that, and they can articulate it in your medical records without, they don't have to do any kind of crazy letter, sometimes that can be used as good evidence to support getting that claim connected. But if they don't want to do that, you can go see other medical professionals. There are a bunch of them out there in the world. They will review your records. They'll use their own system that they've set up, and they will write a nexus letter for you. And they do charge for these. They could charge anywhere from $100 all the way up to, I would say, $2,000, maybe even more. I'd like to think that most of them are a bit reasonable. But they're out there. I do have a website that has a directory of some of them. I've pulled this off of the internet, so it's compiled. I did not do very much verification, if any. Some of them, I'm aware that they have good reputations, but I do not recommend any of them in particular. But they're there. I've compiled the list. If you just want to use that, it's a free resource for you. Go on there. You might be able to find one that works for you. Click on I have their websites. Click on their link to their thing. Like I said, I don't have a partnership with any of them at all right now. I don't get affiliate commissions. In the future, I may even charge them for those listings, but right now, in full transparency, at the time of this recording, I don't do that. Regardless, it's there for you. If you decide to use one, I would ask that you review them publicly, so that other vets can see how good they were for you or bad they were, and that'll help you out. Again, use your doctor if you can. It would probably look better, but just make sure that your doctor understands a few things. I do have an article written on that same website about what things to tell your doctor so that they understand that how this thing should be written and what they should be looking for. One of them is they should understand what kind of military activities you were involved in. They should review your service treatment records, all those good things. That's all in there. I'll leave a link to that in the description block, but it's pretty much just the informveteran.com. So moving on to presumptive. Presumptive is probably the easiest one to connect to, connecting a disability to your service. And that's because, if you served in a qualifying, area or time frame, or you were exposed to certain things, the VA will recognize some conditions and those those different criteria as presumptive or presumed to be connected to service. A really common one is tinnitus, ringing in the ears. If you were in an MOS that had loud noise exposures, or you can show the VA that you had loud noise exposures, it could be presumably connected. And that's an important one because it is so easy. And why would we want to miss out on an easy way to connect a current condition that we have or we're experiencing to our military service for a rating? So there's a bunch of different examples out there. Easy to find these on Google. Very possible that you may have one that you've never thought about. I was out of the military for years and never even applied for tinnitus until I figured out that it was possible. And it blew my mind that I was missing something that I never knew about. So the last one is aggravation of a pre-existing condition. This is also kind of a tough one. This basically means that you came into the military with a condition, and through your service, your active duty service, that condition worsened, and it was beyond the scope of what it would normally progress to. So, maybe there was some sort of, I don't know, maybe you had asthma. Not that I think you can have asthma going into the military, but maybe you had a mild form of it, and then you were exposed to smoke. Maybe you were a firefighter, or maybe the burn pits, and it increased it made that condition much worse. That would be an example of an aggravation in service. So that one can also be something that you can connect to your military service. The type of evidence that you're going to need to, obviously show that you had it prior to. You're going to need to show that it got progressively worse. Maybe you had, a slight hearing loss that was acceptable to enter the military, but then you were in a field of that required a bunch of, you were exposed to loud noises all the time. And, maybe you need to show your hearing test and how your hearing tests show that your hearing drastically decreased while you're in active duty service. That would be an example to show that it was aggravated. That pre-existing condition was aggravated by military service. So those are the 4 different connections or ways to connect your current disabilities to active duty military service. Again, direct service connect is probably the most common. Probably the easiest one is presumptive. And then the harders would be the pre-existing conditions and secondary service connecting conditions. Again, check out informveteran.com. There's a lot of resources on there. There's resources on there to help you, ask your doctor for help writing a nexus letter. And there's also doctors on there that will write these for you for a fee, of course. I hope that this video helps you out. Good luck in your journey.